Hey everybody, welcome to episode 2 of the Gray Havens podcast. My name is Dave Radford, part of a band called The Gray Havens that I'm in together with my wife, Alicia. And this podcast is very much an experiment. It's been a fun experiment so far. We're only on the second episode, but it's been enjoyable to try and tell the story of how we made our most recent album called Blue Flower. I have a newfound respect for anybody trying to put together a podcast. There's more than meets the eye. And if you did not listen to the first episode, the main point or highlight was that our new album, Blue Flower, was directly inspired by C.S. Lewis's autobiography, Surprised by Joy. And if you're not familiar with C.S. Lewis, he wrote The Chronicles of Narnia, Screwtape Letters. He wrote Mere Christianity and was massively influential as a writer of the 20th century. I highly recommend Surprised by Joy if you haven't read it. In the book, Lewis tells his life story through the lens of a feeling that he calls joy, which he defines as, quote, an unsatisfied desire more desirable than any satisfaction. A longing, a sort of bittersweet, painful pleasure of desire for something more. And in the last episode, we talked about this passing comment that he makes in one of the early chapters with regard to this feeling. He was about 6 years old, had one of these experiences, and named himself a, quote, votary of the blue flower. And a votary is just an admirer of. So admirer of the blue flower, which I had no idea at the time of reading that sentence what the blue flower meant. But it was written in it was like a hyperlink that I was supposed to be able to click on or know what the meaning was. And I didn't. So the blue flower was used in German literature, just as a recap, to symbolize the very experience that Lewis is describing in his book. It's a sort of physical emblem that represents the unsatisfied desire. And I grabbed onto it early on as a lyrical anchor for the title track and eventually the album. And the title track is what we're going to talk about today. We're going to dig into the writing and recording of Blue Flower. So here we go. When it came to the lyrical writing of the song, I distinctly remember and being surprised by how quickly the lyrics came onto the page. I'm a historically / notoriously slow lyric writer. I wish I was way faster than I am. I typically clock in around 2 or 3 weeks per song that it takes me. And the way that I typically go about writing songs, just as a quick tangent, is I'll usually start with some kind of musical idea. I find that melodic inspiration comes a lot quicker than lyrics, and it's just easier for me to get started if I have some cool sound or progression that I'm inspired by. And I remember showing the lyrics to Alicia, which is the next step in the songwriting process. So I'll try to get what I think to be a passable verse and or a chorus idea together, and then at which point I will call Alicia into the room, or I'll rush into whatever room she's in, interrupt whatever she's doing, say, hey, can you listen to my idea? And she's really great about listening right away. And second tangent here, I went to the University of Illinois as a music ed / vocal performance major after I graduated high school. So it was around 2010. And just before entering into college, I had written my first few songs. I had a friend in high school who was in this Dave Matthews cover band, and I was into like Frank Sinatra and all this kind of choir, band type music. And anyway, he basically roped me into my first co-write session, and I reluctantly, started, trying to write the song that he wanted to write. And I just remember like a whole new world of possibilities opened up, and I was so captured by this idea of writing music. And that followed me into, I was already accepted into university at this point. That followed me into college, to where a couple years in, I kind of knew I didn't want to teach. I really wanted to give this songwriting thing a shot. And I'm so thankful for the classes I was taking, because a lot of them really did help me with my musical knowledge, or journey theory. It was a great venue to learn how to write songs, and just to have the time to do it. Really, while I should have been doing homework and all those kinds of things, there was a practice room in all of these music buildings, like with a piano. Almost every room that I walked into, or a building that I walked into in college, had a room with a piano in some kind of corridor locked away in the room, or in the basement. And even in my dorm room, there were practice rooms. I don't even know, whoever had that idea is a genius. But I remember a couple years into college, I was just writing music all the time. And one piece of the process that just felt intuitive, or like I needed, was just immediate feedback. So if I was excited about something, I'd written a verse or chorus or whatever, I needed to show it to somebody to kind of get a gauge on their reaction. Like, what do other people think of what I just did? Is it any good? Does it work? Does it resonate? And so I would text friends, to come down to the practice room and listen. If the friends didn't respond, or it was off far away in a music building and they're in class or whatever, I would go out into the middle of the hallway and try and convince the first person that I saw walking down the hallway to come in and listen to this song that I just written. And probably just out of being polite and / being intrigued or curious, like, who is this person that's trying to get me to listen to their song? Usually people would, come in to the room and listen. And I remember I would play the song and try as much as I could. I really didn't focus too much on what they said afterwards. That was sort of the piece of information that you could trust the least, because, they don't know you, and, they could just be nice. But what I would do is I would watch the facial expressions on the person's face change with each entry into the next part of the song, or I was just looking for clues. Like their face was this map, and I was trying to figure out, like, maybe not map is the wrong metaphor, but you know what I mean? Like, trying to figure out, like, what is working in this song? Is this landing at all? And so that piece of the process has never not been important. And so fast forward, I don't know how far away, 11 years now, it's still very, very much an important part of the process. And with Alicia, showing her the music, it's way better in a lot of ways and way worse. The highs are higher and the lows are lower, because I absolutely trust Alicia's judgment more than anybody else. So if she says that the song is good, or I love what you're doing, keep chasing that, then I'm just like, my day is made. I feel like I could call it a day, and it's a successful whatever time spent. And the other two options are she'll say, I'm not sure. And the third option is she'll just say, I don't think that's it. Or I don't get it. And those are the low lows where you're just like, I knew it. This song's terrible. I'm terrible. What am I doing? So the process for this album worked very much the same. And I remember having her come upstairs and I pressed play on this recording that I had made of the song. Actually, let's get Alicia in here, and I'd be curious her own memory of what I'm describing right now, the first time that I played this song for her. All right, Alicia is in the studio.
Hello.
Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks.
So, do you remember when I first played you the song Blue Flower? So that's, I guess, the first question. And then the other question is, what is that experience usually like on your end, as the listener or the listenee, I don't know how to say it, of the first presentation of the song?
Okay. I actually don't remember the first time I heard Blue Flower, but I remember always being nuts about this song. So even though it's not a specific memory, I know that I liked it the first time. I always liked this song. Mm-hmm. I thought it was really enchanting and intriguing, and it changed a bit, but like the core of it kind of stayed the same, and it always really excited me.
Yeah. What about what it's like to be, I guess, pitched the first version of a song? Do you feel any kind of pressure with that? I mean, do you feel any kind of, what goes through your mind when I kind of burst into the room and say, hey, Alicia, would you be up for listening to this song like right now?
Okay. I'm trying to get in that headspace. I do feel pressure because I know that it's something that, I don't know, it's personal to you. Mm-hmm. You've spent time on it, usually, sometimes a little bit of time, sometimes a lot of time before I'm hearing it. So I'm mindful of that. But I know that you want my honest opinion too. So it's like just this weird balance of being open to a new idea and respecting that and seeing where it goes, but also being honest. Mm-hmm. And those are both hard things for me to do. Also, it takes me a while to settle into something, to like a new thought or to wrap my head around something that I'm hearing for the first time. Mm-hmm. And so it can be that way with a song too, where it takes me maybe even a few times listening to sing it or play it before I feel like I have a grasp on what it is to even give feedback. I was going to say there have been lots of magic moments over the years where I have liked an idea instantly upon hearing it. Mm-hmm. And I do think that Blue Flower was one of those. Yeah, I'm trying to think of an example. There have been a handful of songs that I didn't really like, or I was like, I don't know if this should go on the record.
Like from this album?
I was just thinking over the course of all the records, but I'm trying to think of a specific example. I don't know. Do you remember any that I pushed back on a lot and we ended up moving forward with? And I did. Sometimes it's a slow burn for me. Mm-hmm. And so I try to keep that in mind too. Yeah. But
I am trying to think. Nothing comes to mind, but I know that we've had those moments for sure. I'm thinking of maybe one or two on this album that we haven't released yet. So I won't say.
We can talk about those later.
Yeah, but thank you for dropping by to give your take.
Yeah, I'm glad to. Let's do it again sometime.
Yes, yeah. I'll have you back again soon.
All right.
fast forward about a year plus, and it's finally time to start the recording process for the album. And for the last few projects, we have worked with producer and good friend Ben Shive. We worked with him on Rest, our EP. We worked with him on our album She Waits and our album Ghost of a King. And we love working with Ben. I mean, he is the single most talented musician that I know or have met. And this time around, we wanted to mix up the process from how we'd been doing it the last few projects to try to get a fresh approach. So he came over to our place instead of us going to him. And we're so thankful to have a place in our house where we can record sort of a smallish studio. And he would come over every day. And I remember in the first couple of days, we were dreaming about the album and talking through how we wanted to approach the recording. And it was cool this time around because in the past, with each album, I've always come into the studio with a little bit of fear and trepidation and nervous energy because I simply didn't have all of the songs written. And lyrics to me are the absolute most important thing. Why are we here if not to say something? And if I don't know what it is that we're going to say, it's hard for me to feel comfortable or fully engaged in creating an accompaniment of or a musical arrangement to something that isn't written yet. And got into a lot of trouble with our album She Waits with that because I was writing furiously and as well as I could in the months leading up to going into the studio, and I just was just like a dry well. I was not able to write lyrics for these songs, and I came into the studio with 2.5 songs written out of the 10 that we wanted to record, and that's its own saga. And it was thankfully somehow or another the album got finished. But this time around, though, it was completely flipped to where we had all of the lyrics pretty much written, and all of the structure, the main decisions, basically the heart and the soul of all of the songs were fleshed out with the chords, melody, lyrics, the bare what the song is. And so in the beginning process, it was a lot more fun to dream about the album and all that it could be without that sort of nagging white noise underlying monster that is, you don't have the lyrics done for this album, that kind of thing happening. And I think we established fairly early on that we wanted to make the album sort of in the order that the listener would end up experiencing it. So try and create, track 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all in order. Also to get a kind of real-time sense on what are we feeling right now as far as where does the album arc need to go, musically? Does it need to go up right now? Do we need a listener break? What does it need? And I think that was really helpful as we made each song. But like I said, we knew right away that we wanted Blue Flower to be the first song that people hear on the album. I saw you, blue flower. Now who's to say where you come from feels like far away. When it comes to lyrics, there's really two different desires at play here. I mean, on the one hand, there's the desire to experience this emotion, joy, again. I imagine it when I was writing it down. I was imagining it as the first encounter with joy, having just occurred. It's like, what is that? I want to feel that again. So there's this element of, I want that experience again. I saw you, blue flower, and who's to say where you come from feels like far away. The far away is also kind of commenting on whatever this is, it feels somehow so far away as to be alien from my daily reality and where I live, where I'm from, but also not alien in the fact that it feels like more home, or what I was made for, or where I was meant to be. So I mentioned there was two desires. On the one hand, there's the desire to experience this emotion, this stab again. But there's also the desire to locate its source. Where does it come from? And ultimately go there, or arrive at that point of origin. And that more dips into the chorus lyric, which is, I had to find you, I had to see you, I couldn't let you go. If only I could finally reach you, the gardens where you grow. So really, the blue flower in the book I take as the symbol of desire, not the at root foundational, object of desire. It's more of an experience that points to something else. In itself, it's a desirable experience, but it's not like the ultimate landing point. It's itself pointing to something beyond, something more. So that whole swirl of, what I just said is kind of the thrust of where we wanted to go lyrically with this song, and to set the stage for the album, to frame it. And to me, it really felt like a launching off, basically, from the shores of wherever this character, this person currently is, into the waters of, I'm going to chase this thing, and I'm going to explore maybe where it comes from, and maybe I'll find it. And really, it's not as though I had to assume a character or try to imagine what this feeling or emotion is like. I mean, my own reading of his series, The Chronicles of Narnia, itself was a series of, landmines for this kind of feeling. I mean, it's hard not to have a history with this experience if you're a human being, living on planet Earth, whether it's just experiences out in nature, you're listening to a certain piece of music, you're moved in a certain passage of a book or a certain scene from a movie or whatever it is. I imagine that most of us at one point or another, to one degree or another, have experienced this longing that Lewis describes for something greater, something even transcendent or eternal, that feels not just like wishful thinking, but feels like real. Like there's a source here, and it's just beyond my grasp. But I sense that it's there because of these feelings that I keep having. And the question for Lewis at an early age, and up until he was about 32 years old, was, is it for nothing, or is there something to this? Musically, we wanted to create that feeling that I described in verse 1, of this feeling of far awayness, like it's coming in almost as a radio, like a faint radio transmission. And I remember finding this woodwinds patch, and Ben did his kind of tweak production magic on it to make it sound like it was kind of coming in and out from far away. We also brought in some sound effect nature things. I think there was some wind, wind blowing through the trees type noises, and some ocean, I think waves, and maybe I'll go into that stuff more in a different song. But we wanted to just create this pad, this place for the lyrics to sing over top of. And we also wanted them to kind of be growing and swelling and crescendoing, coming to a head almost, until we get to this musical transition point. I think Ben's wisdom and experience and instinct was to keep it sparse and human, and I'm really glad that he did that. So we ended up stacking my voice a good amount of times in the verse section to create this mini chamber group of singers, all singing the main lyric together.
Saw your blue flower. Now who's to say where you come from feels like far away.
Once we reached this arrival point of this crescendo, like I mentioned, coming to a head, there's this release that I like happening in the ascending glockenspiel part. It's just 4 notes that go up the scale. And that was in the original Logic session that I had created like almost a year prior. Originally, this 4-note scale was basically going to carry the song from that sort of turning point through the entirety of the chorus, with Alicia and I singing over top of it.
I had to find you, I had to see you, I couldn't let you go. If only I could finally reach you, the gardens where you grow.
I remember we had spent a couple days on the track. I think it was Thursday and Friday we got started, and took a break over the weekend. And a lot of times this happens where you'll spend a really good amount of time concentrated, thinking so hard about one creative idea, and then a break will happen, whether later that day or the next day or whatever. You're doing something else. I think I was out driving, and I heard this instrumental hook or melody in my head, and I grabbed my iPhone as soon as I could and recorded this voice memo. Super sophisticated, I know. After I made the voice memo, I think I rushed over to my computer, pulled up a Logic session, and just sketched in an electric guitar sound playing that hook idea. When we came back on Monday to get to work again, I showed Ben the electric guitar part. And it really, he thought it was cool, and it changed the direction and the whole vibe of the song. So it felt less like mysterious, floaty, stepping off type of vibes, and more like, okay, we're going. Like, and this is more of like hopeful, optimistic, excited feeling. And Ben had the idea of taking that electric guitar sound and stacking on top of it with different world instruments like hammer, dulcimer, all these instruments that I can't pronounce. I think there was like a sitar, a Goud, like this string instrument, Goud. I'm totally butchering that. But all these world instruments we stacked on top of each other so that the hook sounded like this. Once we had this new piece of information, this new sort of, I'm kind of imagining like I was in the marching band as a trumpet player. imagining I forget the name of the person that's out front, directing the band. It's not the director or the conductor. It's like a student that, anyway, I'm getting in the weeds, but basically whoever's leading the marching band, that is what I sort of imagine this hook being. I mean, it's kind of like leading the rest of the band. And from here on out, production-wise, it was so fun to fill out the rest of the song with strings and horns and percussion and all of this kind of pulsing and swelling and crescendoing into the final seconds of the song. I wanted it to feel like never establishing a predictable, because it's so short, the chorus. I mean, I just wanted it to keep crescendoing all the way through to the end. And so happy with how it turned out. I think that's where we're going to leave it on this episode. And hope that you've enjoyed listening so far to the first couple episodes. We'll pick it up again in episode 3. We're going to dig into Rhythm of the East, which is the second song on the album. And excited to talk about that one. A lot of different references going on there. And if you enjoyed the podcast so far, we'd love it if you shared it on social media. Like and subscribe. All those things really help us get the word out about the album and the podcast and all those things. So anyway, thanks again for listening, guys. And here is our song, Blue Flower.
I saw your blue flower, and who's to say where you come from? Feels like far away. Felt your blue flower in my soul. You got me longing for something more. Now I want something more. Where are you, blue flower? Come back and stay, 'cause I can't